My name is Heidi Weber, and I'm a whistleblower. I'm credited with being one of the first women whistleblowers in the higher education industry to go through a long legal battle and survive a 7-day jury trial. That experience changed my life, and I'm on a mission to show America just how hard that battle is. After my story aired on CBS, I decided that I wanted to create a podcast that would focus on the journey of a whistleblower, the process, the daily struggles, and all the amazing people that surround them that help them along the way. We take an inside look into what whistleblowers go through each day and getting rid of all the negativity that surrounds that word so that we can get down to some real facts and genuine information. That way we can hold the corrupt forces accountable and help others find their voice too. Join us because this one's definitely no tea party. Well, thanks for joining me today. Today we have the illustrious, famous Vincent McKnight, who's a whistleblower attorney from Sanford Heisler, which is a big whistleblower firm. That's wonderful. They do a lot of good stuff there. Um, so welcome. Thank you for being
Thank
my
you.
guest
No
today.
problem.
So I wanted to talk about a few things just because um, I live close to Minneapolis and St. Paul and everything with George Floyd
Hmm.
recently. And I wanted to get your input, just your thoughts about this whole environment, that we're in right now
Hmm. Well,
and how it
that's
ties
very
in with law, and how it ties in with, yeah, not just your personal feelings, but, your,
well. It to me. It's very interesting on so many different levels. I mean, first off, I have five brothers
wow.
and I have three sons. But
Oh,
the point is that this conversation about being safe as a black male has been going on since I was a little boy. In fact, I remember being stopped by the police for the first time when I was about 7 years old and searched by two, white police officers in Northeast Washington.
at
And
7 years old,
at
7 years
7 years
old.
old, they just stopped us and searched us. And coincidentally, we had money because my father had given us $20 so that we could go to the store and experience buying Christmas presents for our brothers and sisters. So my brother and I were on our way to the store and we got stopped. And it was funny, looking back on it, is that my first reaction was fear and I started to run. And my brother grabbed me and pulled me back. And they searched us. They asked us where we got the money from. We told them, then they let us go. And that's 7 years old. And
This would have been
so
in the 60s, maybe
I'd
in
say that I
70s.
was it was right at the beginning of the 60s.
Wow.
And so from that point forward, I'm being honest with you when I tell you I can't tell you how many times I was stopped by the police. During the time that I was a teenager riding with my friends, it was almost a weekly experience on the weekends. It was just a constant thing that happened to us all the time. When I was in law school and I was in Philadelphia, they pulled a gun on me and pulled the trigger and laughed.
God.
So it's it's a um, it's a common thing that we go to through. And I remember my father sitting down and talking to me about how to survive a police encounter. So that's the first thing. You want to survive the police encounter. And I remember having that conversation with my sons that you want to survive the encounter. And so, not giving any reason for them to hit you, beat you, or anything else like that, and trying to just survive the encounter so that we can deal
Yeah.
with it later. But that's so for. But I think that before the age of cell phones, if you told somebody that that was your experience, they didn't believe you or wondered whether you perhaps had done something to instigate the contact.
Really.
Maybe you were acting up or something like that, but people didn't believe it. And so cell phone videos, I think, has made America see a part of our lives. But there is not a black man in America who has not been stopped by the police or searched or pulled aside or thrown on the top of a car or followed in a store or any number of things that we're now seeing on the TV set in the news.
And where did
Um,
you grow up, Vincent? Where did,
in Washington
in
D.C.,
Washington, right in,
right in Washington
gosh,
D.C.
right in our capital, really? That,
Oh, it
you
was
think of these things as happening down south and like Deliverance, and it's everywhere. It is
well. You
everywhere.
have to think about Washington. We think about Washington now as being this big cosmopolitan city, but Washington in the 60s and early 70s was a southern town. It just happened to be the place where the capital and the federal government were located. But other than that, it felt more like Richmond or Atlanta than it did like Philadelphia. And it's somewhere after about the 1970s into the 80s, it started becoming this very she, um, cosmopolitan city that it is now that we all know. But when I was growing up, the city was, frankly, very segregated. And so, it was a very southern town, and blacks lived in certain neighborhoods and whites lived in other neighborhoods, and never the twain shall meet. And when I was a youngster is when some of the private schools just started um, to move forward into integration. So I was one of the first 3 or 4 blacks to attend and graduate from Georgetown Prep, and a lot of them had never had a black classmate, and I had to like take the bus across town to catch the school bus, then to catch all the way out to where prep was out on Rockville Pike. And so I was exposed to a whole new world. I didn't know. I mean, my father was a doctor, right? But he practiced in Northeast and Southeast Washington. And as I said, I had 8 brothers and sisters. So we were not poor, or we never wanted for food or clothing and things like that, but we did. The city was segregated, and you pretty much lived in your own world.
Did
And
your mom stayed at home? She was a stay-at-home mom, or?
my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My mom's an interesting character. My mother um, was accepted into the PhD program at the University of Pennsylvania for mathematics in about 1945.
Wow.
And
Wow.
not only was she probably one of the only women in the class, I know she was the only African American woman in the class. And back then, um, my father was doing his residency at Howard in Washington. And so she essentially went to Philadelphia to go to school and stayed with family and commuted back and forth to DC.
Wow.
Well,
Wow.
back in those days, you had to pick whether you wanted to be get your master's or your PhD. So she got past the master's degree, and that's when they discovered she had cancer in the jaw. And this was before I was born. She
Oh
only
my
had 2 children.
gosh.
So they removed her jaw, and she was one of the first radiation treatment people, and she was a cancer survivor.
Wow.
So this very brilliant person could not finish her degree,
Mm.
and she had after that she had 7 more children, and she spent her time working on us. And I guess
Wow.
she did a good job because I have 3 brothers who are doctors. I had another sister who was a lawyer. I got a brother who's an MBA, a sister who was a writer, another brother who does records management, another brother who's a photographer. So I
Jeez.
she spent all her time trying to make sure that we got through school well and did what we were supposed to be doing. And she had a way of making excellence seem normal. Like if you got an A, there wasn't like a big
Mhm.
dance around the room. It was
Right.
sort of like, okay, that's fine. No, she normalized it.
You know what, though? There's some psychology to that. There really is, because, think of all the extra hurdles, and I'm so sorry that you have to face all those extra hurdles, but, um, you know, you have to overcome more things than a white person would have to. And then your mom just made it seem like it's nothing. And so all of you have just been these brilliant, successful stories, and that's amazing. That really is amazing.
So she,
Um,
she did her job, and
that's great.
funny where I'm living right now. My wife, coincidentally, I didn't know it at the time, but she lived about 15 blocks from where I lived when I was a small boy, and
Oh, wow.
we didn't meet till we got to college, and I met her briefly, but didn't know she was from Washington, and then I bumped into her after I graduated from law school, and now I'm actually sitting in the living room, I guess, of the house that her father built in
Oh, wow.
1959. So we renovated it and moved back into the city after the kids, our kids, they're not kids, 27 to 36 moved out.
I-
And so now we're back in the city and back in the neighborhood where we both grew up. And so that's all
Are there a
fun
lot
and
of people
interesting.
that are still there? Like from when you were growing up? A
Yeah,
lot of.
yeah, actually, there are. Like my wife's best friend from when she was a little girl is around the corner, and
Wow.
in the same house that she grew up in. In fact,
Wow.
she married the guy who lived in a house next door, and he passed away. So she has two houses on the street, right next to each other, around the corner. And the
That's great.
people on the street, there are quite a few that were here for a long time. So there's a lot of gentrification, yes, but there's a lot of people who have been here from the very beginning. And we go into the store sometimes, and somebody will say, "Aren't you one of the McKnights?" And I go, "Yeah, I am." So
The McKnight. That's what you need to
I
say. The one.
I don't know if I'm the McKnight because I'm toward the middle, but
So it makes
it's
sense. You're
fun.
the politician if you're the middle, in the middle. That's what I call my middle daughter the politician because she's
Well,
always,
you do. You
right.
have to. You're sort of like people talk about middle children and they say, "Oh, it's terrible." I thought it was great
Yeah.
because you get to see everybody else. Like, for example, I have an older brother and two older sisters, and my oldest sister, who's passed away, was say she was 8 or 9 years older than me, and so you have to think about it. She was going to college. Every before me, everybody in my family went to Howard,
Oh,
and
wow.
because my father taught medical school at Howard. So everybody went to Howard before me. I was the first one not to go to Howard. So the point is that when I'm a little kid, I'm hanging around Howard University,
Wow.
around these brilliant, people, and I'm
Hmm.
watching my sisters go to college. They're writing papers. My mother's helping them. Most of the people in the neighborhood were either professors or teachers or administrators at Howard University. Everybody I knew was connected with Howard in one way or another. So there was this sort of, I don't know, supportive environment for learning and education and that sort of thing that I grew up in. And then the civil rights movement was very important back then too. I remember, this is funny because we used to go to this place where my mother was born. It was on the York River called Cappahoosic, Virginia, and that's right across the
That's
river
fun.
from Williamsburg. And there's a
Okay.
place there called the Robert Moton Center. And I didn't think about it at the time, but my father and his friends would meet, and my mother, they'd meet here in the summer and talk about politics and civil rights. And then
I bet you that was a
there,
fun conversation to listen
yeah,
to.
and I'd walk out of the room and in and out of the room, things like that. And then there was a guy in there named Uncle Ted, right? We called him Uncle Ted. He was just
Okay.
Uncle Ted. And then, later on, I'm reading books, and Uncle Ted is really Ted Poston, the very famous,
Wow.
black journalist
Hmm.
who, chronicled the entire civil rights movement,
Hmm.
following Thurgood Marshall all through the South. But to
Hmm.
us, it was just Uncle Ted, and then
That
there
is
was
so cool. That
you
is
know
really
the
amazing.
the president of Morehouse and these other places. They were just people that were in our lives, and asking us what we want to be when we wanted to grow when we grew up and things like that. But they were around us. So I remember meetings happening in my house, and then the doctors coming to
Wow.
meet when there were going to be a demonstration and who's going to handle the health tents to
Wow.
take care of
Wow.
people who were dehydrated. I remember the March on Washington and all the people that came to Washington. People stayed at our house, and just
Wow.
everything like that was going on around
Wow.
us when we were like kids growing up in DC. So it was just It
That's
was
really
in the air. You know what I mean? It was Washington. You know.
that's really crazy. Did you, Dr. King, you didn't ever get to see him? Did you get to see him speak at all or?
No, no, no. They were worried on when on the March on Washington that that there might be violence. So everybody dressed up in their Sunday best and went down there. But little kids, I was 10, and I didn't reach the age cutoff to go down to the March on Washington. I watched it on
Mm,
TV, and then I think my grandmother stayed with us back at the house, the ones who couldn't go. And I think my older sisters were able to go, Joanne and Leslie, and my parents and my uncle went. But the kids who were under a certain age, we stayed home watching it on TV. I remember it happening,
wow.
just like it was yesterday, because that was about oh, 15 blocks from where I'm sitting right now in that house before
Well,
we
that's the whole thing about DC. When I was there, I can't believe how close in proximity everything is so close together. I was just
small. It's
surprised.
small. It's a
Yeah,
small town.
yeah,
You know,
really.
it's a small town. So
Yeah,
that's
wow.
kind of where
So,
where I come from.
today you're an educated man. I mean, you are uber educated and your whole family, kudos to you. I mean, for working hard and getting your education. What made you become a lawyer? What made you become a whistleblower lawyer, especially?
That's two tough questions. I mean, because my family's a medical family. You
Right?
know, my dad's a doc and thought everybody should be a doctor. So my older brother's a doctor. I've
Yeah.
got a younger brother's a doctor. I've got a sister who's a doctor, and I'm a junior. So he was sort of like, well, you have to be a doctor. And I was like, no, I don't want to be a doctor. I don't know what happened. I was torn because I was good in sciences, but at some point in time, I I became aware of the law, and I became aware of the impact of the law. I became aware of Thurgood Marshall. I became aware of there's a famous civil rights lawyer named Frank Reeves, and he worked on a lot of the early civil rights cases. In fact, the D.C. municipal building that's at 14th and U is named after him. It's Frank Reeves,
Wow.
and he literally lived down the alley from me when I was a kid, and I played with his children. And so, you are exposed to different things, and I just sort of started gravitating toward, the law as a tool for change, and I thought it was something that I would like to do. And so, it may seem corny, but I saw Gone with, To Kill a Mockingbird, and I read the
Mhm.
book, and
Wow.
it actually had a big impact on me because I saw that the character in the book stood up for what was right, even though he lost. And it was
Right.
kind of, I
Right.
mean, he did the right
Right.
thing, even though he lost. And
Mhm.
I think that is an important notion, because if you're going to if you're gonna fight the good fight out here, you can't always expect to win. Yes, you want to win, but the powers that be are kind of stacked against you, so you might even lose. So the question
Right.
is can you stand up and fight for the right side of things, even if you lose? And so that's something that um, uh, I I don't know, it attracted me, and then I didn't start off doing whistleblowing work. I started off doing general plaintiffs work. I was doing a lot of personal injury, a lot of trials.
Oh.
I was doing
Oh,
employment
wow.
discrimination, civil rights cases. For years, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, my practice was focused on representing railroad workers who were injured. So
Mm.
I represented a lot of people from Amtrak and CSX. And
Oh,
I
wow.
also, in fact, that was my whole practice. And so what happened that was very interesting is that I started off working with the people in the union. And then I found that the managers, people that I deposed, started coming to me for employment discrimination cases. So the workers came to me
Oh.
when they got injuries,
Mhm.
and the managers came to me when they felt they were being wrongfully terminated or discriminated against. So I
Yeah.
had two different things going on with the railroad at the same time. And one
Wow.
group was the injured people, and one group was the people on employment cases. So that's
Huh.
what my practice was built around the railroad back then. And a railroad worker came to me, and his name was Ed Totten. And he was talking about how he was about to be fired, and he was upset because he was complaining about the way the contract for the Acela trains
Hmm.
had been done, and he was very concerned about it. So, so he was coming to me and wanted to know whether there was something we could do about it. And so I had been reading, and I thought, well, wait a second, that's a major procurement contract. And I started researching, and I went and filed my first uh, whistleblower case, and it
Wow.
involved him.
Wow.
And so I went to the Court of Appeals twice in that case. The first time, God, what's his name? I can see his face. I
Court of
won the first.
Appeals. Okay.
I had to go to the DC Circuit, meaning that
Ah.
I went all the way through the trial court. We didn't go to trial, but there was some motion. Then after the motion, I went up to the DC Circuit and I won, got reversed, got sent back down. Then I
Oh my
went up the
God.
second time to the DC Circuit.
Jeez.
And the second time in the DC Circuit, I was arguing in front of John Roberts
Wow.
and Merrick Garland. And Merrick Garland agreed with me, and John Roberts didn't. And it became actually a famous decision. Totten v. Bombardier was a very famous False Claims Act case, but I lost. And so the funny thing is you fast forward after that, and I got a phone call from Texas, and there were these clients down there who noticed that people were sidestepping the Trade Agreements Act and selling Chinese products to the United States government illegally.
Mm.
And they knew
Oh.
it because they ran a company and they had been penalized for doing it. And so they said, well, wait a second, they fined us for doing this, but everybody else is doing it. So I started
Mm.
suing the everybody else, Staples, Office
Wow.
Depot,
Yeah.
and all of that. And we got a series of, multi-million dollar results against them. But the point that I was trying to make is that they came to me because they noticed that I had fought that Totten case up and down to the Court of Appeals twice, and
Mm.
they wanted a lawyer who would fight for them.
Right.
So these Texas people saw that I fought that case all the way up and down, and came to me because of that. And that's how my whistleblower career began. And then funny was is that fast forward, I think I forget what year it was when they did the amendments again, maybe 1996ish or so. The Congress amended the law, and they in the report they were talking about the cases that were wrongly decided. And the
Oh, and they
first
brought up the.
case, oh, it was the first
Mm.
case they mentioned was Totten v. Bombardier, and
Mm.
they overturned it and changed the law. And
Really?
and when John Roberts was being questioned before his confirmation, he was asked about his decision in the Totten v. Bombardier case and whether it was rightly decided or not.
Wow.
And so the ABA called me for my insights into John Roberts during the time that they were trying to approve him. And they also called me about Merrick Garland. So I got calls before both of their confirmation. Not, it wasn't confirmation with Merrick, it was just getting ready. But yeah, so I've run into Judge Garland and we joke about the fact that we were really right because look, they changed the law. And my father-in-law, before he passed away, he would say that the problem with our government is that there aren't enough, as he called it, statesmen anymore.
Yeah.
People who
Mm.
actually, at the end of the day, my first loyalty is to the United States of America and to
Servants,
the
public servants,
public servants, and I'm not here.
absolutely.
And so, all right, for some things, okay, we're Democrats, we're Republicans, but there's a
Mm.
line.
Right.
And once we get over that line, we're here to defend and protect the Constitution of the United States of America. And that's um, what seems to be missing in our discourse now is that,
Mm.
okay, we can argue party down here, but there's a point where
Hmm.
whatever is happening is a threat to
Right.
the United States of America and the ideals for which it was established. And we need to have a conversation about that if we're going to
And
continue.
how it relates to the Constitution. I think we kind of get a little bit, we're kind of skirting away from the Bill of Rights.
Right,
I get really ticked, because I'm a whistleblower. I can get ticked off, but I get upset with this whole, freedom of assembly is important to me. I
right.
think that's important to everybody. And I think this whole isolation, I kind of go back and forth going, geez, the data doesn't really match what we're being told, as far as coronavirus. And it's coronavirus has been around for ages. The stats are similar to other viruses in past years. Anyway, the fallout from everything that's happened, I just feel like that's going to be the hardest impact on everyone. And I think in Minneapolis, they gave people a curfew. They gave us a curfew after George Floyd, because there are people out looting, and of course
Hmm.
that's wrong. We need to prosecute those people, but I kind of have a problem with the curfew thing, because I'm like,
Right.
I'm over 21. I can go wherever I want to as long as I'm not breaking the law. um, and I feel like everybody's apathetic. They just don't, they don't get excited or care, or they're
Well,
just okay with that.
I think I think it's right now. I think it's a little deeper. Um, I think there's a lack of empathy, and
Yeah.
I think that it's hard for people to put themselves in the shoes of the other person now. So I think that we've gotten to a point now where um, uh, I don't think that a lot of people understand or have an appreciation for the thousand little paper cuts and sometimes
Hmm.
outright wounds that you go through across a lifetime
Right.
because you walk around in brown skin. It gets to be sort of a thing that we live with and we keep going. But it's not like every time something happens, I complain about it. But I'm saying that it's hard to, if I were to sit down and make a list of things that happen, you would be shocked by them, and then it would take a long time. So that's the point. I think that uh, you know there's it's part of what we've had to live with, and that's been the struggle with the what's going on now. I know I've talked to my brothers and my sons about it, and they tell me that sometimes it's a little PTSD-ish
Yeah.
because in
Well,
order for us to go forward on a daily basis, we deal with these things. They happen. We talk about them amongst ourselves, and then we push forward and we forget about it. So, what is it? What is it like in a world where you can't do that because it's on the news every day and it's happening to somebody else, and then at the same time, it's just the all around you because of the protests. So, on the one hand, I'm happy that people are becoming aware of this. On the other hand, it's bringing back all the things that you went through all across your entire lifetime. Like
yeah.
for me, back to when I was 7 years old or when I was 8 and my father was arrested. And funny story, but it was true. I told you my dad was a doc. And so he was one of the only doctors in Northeast, Southeast Washington servicing that area.
Wow.
And my dad, God bless him, God rest, he learned how to play the accordion.
Okay.
and so
Awesome.
and so
Right on.
my cousin was a guitar player, and they went off somewhere to go play guitar and accordion. And a
That's awesome.
young
That's great.
rookie cop stopped them and arrested them for driving while black, and then took
Jeez.
them down to the fifth district and then arrested them for disorderly conduct or something like that.
So when he got down there, the sergeant at the desk or something happened to be going by the cells and said, "What's Doc doing? What's Doc doing in a cell?" And then the rookie said, "Well, he was done." He goes, "Oh no, 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 no! Doc doesn't belong in the cell."
Right
So
on.
then the sergeant decided that he needed to get Doc out of the cell. Well, Doc says that he arrested me, so take me in front of the judge and make it stick. And so my father wouldn't leave. And so there was like
Oh,
the whole neighborhood was in my house. The priests came and the neighbors
geez.
came and everybody came. They had to send a committee of people down to get my father out of the jail because he wouldn't leave from the jail. And
Did
I
they let him have his
remember
accordion in there while he was in
I
there?
don't know what he did with his accordion, but he wouldn't leave, and they had to send a committee down to get him. And I remember the committee going down to get him, and I remember him coming back, and I remember him saying, "They arrested me, then make it stick. They arrested me, then make it stick." And I'm 9, and he's mad, and I see how mad he is, and I'm saying that's just one of dozens of stories I could tell you about encounters with the police. And so, and then not just that, being one of a few blacks at elite schools
Yeah.
and what
Yeah.
the teachers say to you in private when nobody's around. And some of the things they say to you, it's not like you're being encouraged to go through and that sort of thing. They're saying things to you. And if you tell somebody that, well, the Professor Johnson that everybody thinks is a great guy is really not a great guy. He
Mm,
said some bad things to me, but nobody would believe it. So we are experiencing a
mm.
different we have different experiences, and I don't think that people
Don't they add up
know
though? I
fully.
mean, I can
Oh
fully
yeah,
see
they add up.
your dad finally getting to a point where he's just been, subjected to this for so long that he's like, I'm standing my ground, make it stick.
Oh yeah, they
I
add up.
can't.
I had another uncle. He was a play uncle, but he was his. Our families were so close. He was uncle, and he got so fed up at the end of his life. He took his dental practice and just went to Jamaica. He said, "I can't stay in this country anymore," and that was his response at the end. And then I know you know, Randall Robinson, who used to be the head of Trans Africa, and his brother was Max Robinson. He was a newscaster here in DC for years. He left. He became an expatriate. So there are people who get to the point where they go, "I'm leaving."
Yeah.
One part of you says that, well, you don't understand that you don't want to go anywhere because you feel like, okay, I got my family here and I want to keep, it's my country, I keep fighting for it. But the
Right.
point is that it can
Hmm.
wear people down. And so, but I think that, like, what was it the other day, our current president said that
Oh Lord.
he wants to establish a commission to teach positive history of
Oh.
America,
Hmm.
the real history of America, and Frank, and whether you want to admit it or not, the real history of America includes slavery and Jim
Yeah.
Crow, and that
Right.
part of America has not been pretty. And there were
Right.
people who suffered. I mean, I was talking to a lawyer I knew. He was a accomplished guy, and he was like, he didn't know that, for example, after they had the GI Bill and the servicemen came back from World War II, and he didn't know that the blacks were excluded from getting the loans to get houses. So he didn't know that.
I didn't know that
So
either. I guess
yeah,
I didn't realize.
well, that's
Wow.
because they took the bill and they had it administered by the local banks. So the local
Naturally.
banks
Sure. Sure.
said, so the law didn't have anything discriminatory in it, but the local bank said, I'm not giving you a loan. So after World War II, nobody got a loan. So it was like I remember being a kid and them talking about, well, you have to go to Prudential. It was Prudential Bank in DC, Prudential Savings and Loan, because they're the only bank in town that will give a black a loan for a house. So those
And a
kinds
black
of
man, not a black woman. I can't
Right,
imagine.
right,
Mm,
exactly. So
right. Mm,
I'm just saying that this is this is what we've grown
mm.
up with observing, and experiencing firsthand. And so um, how do you bridge that gap? And so that's why I think it gets to be difficult, because I can't, on some levels, I can't expect you to fully appreciate what my life has been like,
Right.
and at the same
Yeah.
time I've achieved. Okay.
You're
but I,
amazing.
but
Yeah.
but I'm saying that I can't expect you to understand what it's been like or what I've seen happen to people who look like me, because it hasn't happened to you. And so,
Right.
but on
Yeah.
the other hand, we're all here together,
Mhm.
and we have to figure out a way to have a conversation about it. And I think people have to open their eyes to the fact um, that we are living different experiences. And so there's a reason
Mhm.
for some of the anger. There's a
There's pain
reason,
there. I
there's
mean,
pain, there's real
right.
pain,
Right.
and there's a reason for the frustration. There's a reason for the pain. It's a little more than just get over it.
Yeah.
So there's a reason for it. And so if we don't, the answer isn't to sweep it under the rug and let's not talk
Or
about it.
pretend it
The
never happened.
or
Right.
pretend it
Right.
never
Right.
happened. The answer is let's try to get it out on a table. I had a real interesting conversation with a German woman.
Wow.
It's yeah, well, that's true. And we were talking, and it was fascinating. She says, "Look, you know, in Germany, they teach
Hmm.
Nazi history and what the Germans did, and they
Right.
teach about the death camps, and they teach about what happened. It's an ugly part of our history. We're not proud of it, but the way we deal with it is we teach and we talk about it
So we don't repeat
so
it.
we don't do it again. And
Right.
and
Right.
I think that we've never done that in the
No.
United States. We
No, we
and
haven't.
so people don't understand, that. I mean, I
The Native
know.
Americans too. We don't talk
Oh
about
yeah,
them. We
we
don't
don't.
talk,
Oh,
it's this whitewashed history, a whitewashed, so to speak,
yeah.
history.
But I'm saying we have to have a conversation about it, and I,
Mhm.
and I think that if at the end of the day, I think most people are are just basically good people who want their
Right.
families
Hmm.
to grow, succeed, and you know, you want to celebrate your birthdays and all of the weddings, and most people are
Right.
more alike
Right.
than different, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
The differences are small, but what the differences are in terms um, of the impact of certain things that still exist in our country. To overcome these things and to overcome the biases, we have to have a conversation, and people have to open their minds to these things.
Hmm.
That's all. And I
And,
don't know how
we
to
got
do
to
it.
treat each other with kindness, just
Yeah,
as we're friends. You're my friend.
yeah.
You were one of the first whistleblower attorneys that was so kind to me on the phone when I'm calling and trying to get stories, and I just always remembered that. And
I
you're always
appreciate it.
very kind. But I think how does a white person approach a black person? I mean, what do you say? Because I think a lot of white people are scared. I mean, they don't want to offend anybody, and they don't want to,
Yeah.
how do you open up that conversation? How do you?
I think one thing is what's amazing now is that there are, when I was a kid, right? I'll never forget this. I remember because I was learning history in school, and history didn't include a history of Black people. So I started seeking out books to learn
Wow.
myself. So I was just reading anything I could get my hands on wherever I could find it.
Did you
And
find a
so,
lot? You were, I mean,
well,
they,
I found books, but my point that I was about to make is that now there's a lot of stuff out there to read.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? There's so
Yeah,
much out there to read that if you can, um, uh, it's so easy now to find a book that talks about history and the history that's been hidden from us.
Right.
I remember that when I was a kid, and there was a historian named Lerone Bennett, and he wrote a book called Before the Mayflower. And
Hmm.
that book talked about, the slave trade and the history of slave. And it was one of the first books that I read that it was that really had a lot of information in it like that. And then I was amazed. It's not like I didn't hear things, because it's interesting when you're a kid, you hear things from the older people. The old people say things like,
Right.
and you hear things and you go, oh, and then you go read books and you find out that they were telling the truth, but at first you just hear it, it's just a story. But
Yeah.
I think that now there's a lot of stuff, and a lot of materials and a lot of articles and a lot of books. And I think that people, I have a lot of white friends who have contacted me and said, what should I read? And I will tell them, try reading this. This is a good place to start. Or try reading that. Here's a good place to start. And then we have a dialogue. They call me back and say, boy, that's some real stuff.
That's
That
great.
I didn't
That's
know that
good.
so and so had, that many slaves. I didn't know that this happened or that happened. And we have a conversation about it. But I think that I've had
Have you
another
been able to track your lineage back? I mean, have
yeah,
you been able to?
yeah.
Yeah, and your
I can
wife
track
too. Yeah.
I can track my father's side of the family. I can track pretty far back, because he's from South Carolina originally,
Oh,
and South
geez.
Carolina kept track of everybody in a bizarre
Right.
kind of way,
Wow.
going
Hmm.
back further. So my mother's family, the trail disappears and it just stops. But
Hmm.
my father's family, I've been able to go back quite a ways. And so, yeah, I know my father's family pretty good, but my mother's side, it just stops and I can't get any more from it. And I know my wife's family, we can go back pretty far there. That's a part of the history that needs to be understood. And then
Hmm.
people will understand uh, that there's a reason um, for
For the
some of the
anger and
poverty.
the
There's
pain
a
and
reason for some of
yeah.
this. There's a reason. I mean, and because the thing about it is that there have been policies that have been unfair that have continued into modern times. I mean, look,
The
I mean, you
prison
look at
numbers are
the,
ridiculous.
well, the prison numbers are the result of the Three Strikes You're Out initiative, which was considered good, and Biden voted for it, and he admits that it was a
Yes.
mistake. But that put um, you know, almost 1/3 of black men between X age and Y age behind jail. That's a whole generation of men gone.
Right. Right.
And the thing that is striking about it is most of it was for small amounts of marijuana or something like
Petty.
that,
Right.
petty stuff. And now you have an opioid crisis, and it's not like three strikes you're out
Right.
and that you've had a human failure. Now they're looking at the situation, well, what is it that led to this person to shoot up on opioids? Let's get them some help. And so
Right.
here you are, you've watched the way it was handled with the three strikes you're out, and you're going, well,
Right.
where was the help back then? So I'm saying
Right.
we still have a different,
There are people still in prison from
there's
that
people
stuff.
still in prison for it, and so the just criminal justice system needs fixing,
Oh,
and we have to
badly.
have
Badly.
conversations about it. And so there's a lot that needs to be fixed. I think job programs, opportunity. I've always thought that if you gave free child care, in fact, there are a couple of millionaires who've
Right.
done this
Yeah.
to a
Yeah.
community so
Mhm.
that the women can go work and
Yeah.
so the women can go to school, so that the women can, go out and build a life for
Right.
themselves. That would
Right.
be like a marvelous, wonderful
That would
thing.
be great. That would
You
be
know what I
great.
mean? And so that would help a lot of things. And so but
Because it would give him that pride too. I mean, that pride is such an
people want to
important
work.
thing,
Yeah,
right?
people want
Confidence,
to work.
right?
People want to work. People don't want handouts. People are
Right.
embarrassed to
They
go
want to hold their
to,
head up, and yeah,
yeah, people want to go to the welfare office and get a check. Nobody
right.
is,
I
I mean,
know. That
this whole
always.
notion that somebody's like,
I
you
know.
know,
I
I can't
know.
wait for my welfare check.
Woohoo! It's coming today.
Right, right.
Nobody does that.
Nobody
I
does
know.
that. And so I think that there's
Nobody asked to be poor. That.
nobody asks to it, but people get locked into it, and
Right.
then
They can't get
um,
out. They
they
can't
can't get
rise.
out, and then the schools that they're going
Mhm.
to aren't very good, and there's no one to say that you can do this. I mean,
Right.
my father came from, his family moved to, uh, he was one of 11 kids. They moved from South
You
Carolina
people
to
are
New York.
busy, aren't you? Holy
Yeah, there
cow,
are a
your
lot of them.
family reunion has to be just huge, whole town.
So he was the next to the youngest, and
Wow.
he was the first one to graduate from high school.
Wow. Wow.
And that was because back then you would
That wasn't
quit.
that long ago.
I
Jeez.
know, but he said you
Oh.
quit school and you got a job because he helped support the whole family. And so he graduated from high school, and then he bummed around for a year, and then great story. There was a place called the um, Friendship House, which was in Harlem, and it was a Catholic missionary there, and it was being operated by a woman named Catherine de Huick. And Catherine de Huick had immigrated from Russia, and she was quite an amazing person. In fact, if you look her up on the internet, you see that some people are putting her up for sainthood.
Oh,
So
wow.
Catherine de Huick was married to Eddie Doherty. And Eddie Doherty was a famous sports writer for like the New York Post or something like
Oh,
that.
wow. That's
And
interesting.
so
Hmm.
they found out about my father and another friend of his, and they sent him to college at St. John's in Minnesota. In what's the place called? It's in Minnesota. It's like Collegeville or St. John's. This small
Oh,
private
Con-
school. Where is it?
Concordia? Is it,
It
is
might be
it,
Concordia, but
yeah.
its sister school is St. Ben's. St. John's, a real small school, and
Wow.
it's right in
That's
the
where your
middle of
dad went to
Minnesota.
college.
That's
Wow.
where he went to college, and so he got a
Oh, wow.
free education because Catherine DeHuck and Eddie Doherty paid for his education. That's how he got to
Wow.
college, and so you know. But again, somebody had to believe in him, and somebody had to give him a chance. And then he then became a doctor, and now
That's
you
awesome.
look at what has happened
That's awesome.
because of changing the life of one person
All the people that
has
are
a ripple
affected.
effect
Hmm.
on through the generations. And so if you've observed anything like that, because it affected not just him, but his brothers had kids who became doctors. Once one person in a family does
Right.
something, everybody else says, hey,
It sets the bar for everyone else. Yeah.
and it becomes something that can be done.
Right.
You
Yeah,
see, the first thing
absolutely.
is that it becomes
Absolutely.
something that can be done,
Hmm.
and then other people will do it. And so it's important to help change a young life.
Is your dad still
And
around?
no, he
Is
passed
he
away
passed? Oh.
in 1980 or 81 when I was a
Oh
young
my
guy.
gosh.
He was
Gosh.
between 60 and 61. So
Wow.
when he died, and so
Mm.
my point is that it's
Wow.
we can change this if we change
Absolutely.
lives and give people chances. People will change their lives, and it'll have a ripple effect across the generations. But people need an opportunity. They need a fair opportunity, and
He
that's not
probably wouldn't have had an opportunity if it wasn't for them at all. He wouldn't have
Oh,
been
there's
able
no
to
way.
do
There's
anything.
no
Yeah.
he wouldn't have had it. He wouldn't have had it,
That's
and it wouldn't have
amazing.
happened. And
That's
so
great.
and then he met my mother when he was at Howard Medical School. She was at a school. There was a small college on the campus of Howard University called DC Minor Teachers College, and my mother was studying to be a teacher, and
Oh.
he met my mother there. So none of that would have happened. I wouldn't be here having this conversation with you. It's like that. But at the end of the
Mhm.
day, everybody wants to find love. Everybody wants their children to
Right.
grow up and thrive.
Be
Everybody,
happy, own a home, have a house. Yeah.
everybody wants the, their
Mhm.
parents to, retire well and to, go to a nice place when it's all said and done. And we all have these family things. I mean, nice
Right,
place in the
right,
sense that, where they can be
right.
taken care of. And everybody wants health. Everybody wants health care,
Life, liberty, and
education.
the pursuit of happiness, right?
Everybody
Right,
wants the same things.
right.
And so, it's, I think that, if you were to ask people, what do you want for your kid? And that's where things really come home. Or what do you want for this one? You would hear the same things coming out of everybody's,
Mm-hmm.
mouths. And so
Mm-hmm.
we there's more that we share than we don't share, but you wouldn't know it from turning on the television set,
Right,
these
right,
days. In fact,
right.
my wife and I take days off. So no news today, and we
Right.
turn it off because
Absolutely. We
it's
do
just
that too.
we
Yeah.
just turn it off because I'm not going to watch it today. It's just too much stuff going on out
Hmm.
there, and we turn it off.
We turned
And
our cable off. I mean, there's times we don't even turn on the TV for a week at a time, you know. Um,
but
and that's not
I
always good either, because you don't always, not that our media is by any means neutral these days in any sense of the word, but you miss out on other things too. You know, I mean, I miss out
yeah.
on other stories, but
But I want to
you're right.
commend
You're
you
right.
because you're not only a great person, you're a whistleblower. And
Right. Right.
whistleblowers are some of the most courageous, wonderful, amazing people. And
Or
that's why,
crazy or naive or, no, no,
perhaps,
I knew what I was doing when I did
but
it.
I
Yeah.
have,
Yeah.
I love working with
What's your
whistleblowers.
favorite whistleblower story? Give us your favorite whistleblower case that
Mm,
you represented.
wowie.
I know out of all those ones, yeah, yeah. Or Sanford Heisler. Maybe it was something,
Oh, this is an
that's
interesting
exciting.
one because it's
And by the way,
controversial.
Vincent works at Sanford Heisler, which is a
That's
big
right.
firm out there. I'll give him a little push.
This this happened a long time ago, and it was in the Wall Street Journal.
Wow.
But a woman came to me, and she was a quality control person at the Red Cross,
Okay.
and she was in charge of um, of checking on the compliance with respect to the blood supply.
Okay.
There's a certain way that you separate
Right. Right.
the blood so that it can be properly stored, and you have
Hmm.
to spin it, and you
There's
have
a
to
whole
like
bunch
keep
of
it at certain
right.
temperatures, all these
Right.
things like that. Well, the Red Cross wasn't doing these things. So
Oh,
she
geez.
said that the quality of the blood was actually degraded. So for example, you have to think about the impact of that. There's an
Right.
automobile accident. You grab a bag of blood. You think
Hmm.
it's about 100% or 90%, good red blood cells, but
God
really
knows.
it's
Yeah.
only 25 or 30, and that's what she was complaining about. So
Okay.
she came to me,
Mm.
and we filed a whistleblower case. And the interesting thing about Patsy, is I'd known her since she was a little girl. She lived around the corner from me when I was a kid.
Oh, wow.
So I believed her implicitly. So we went all the way through the court. And what happened is that the Canadian Red Cross actually shut down because of things like this, and the government took over. Well,
Yeah.
we were fighting this, and the government not only declined the case,
Mm.
but they threatened to dismiss it. It was the first time they got into this whole dismiss the case
Mm.
thing, and uh, and so it was interesting because I think that the decision was more political than anything else.
Was it under
And
OSHA, or how did you file the
no, we
case?
brought
Or
the
false
Red Cross
claim?
was the Red Cross was getting a lot of money from the government because a
Ah,
lot of they got to pay for the blood and things like that. So there was Medicare, Medicaid dollars involved,
okay. Okay.
and so
That's
we went that way with it. But I mean, it was interesting because I thought, well, my God, everybody should know this, right?
right. Right.
Because we want to fix it because we want people to get good blood and so they
Right.
can live. And no, they were like, no, we don't want anybody to know this, and we don't want to fix this, and we'll work on it on our own sweet time. But
Mm.
then there was a guy who figured it out from the Wall Street Journal, and he called and interviewed us and put us on the front page. And I think they did fix it after that, but we didn't make any money off it. But I think we changed the way they do their work.
Did they
So
seal cases back then? Did they seal them, or were you were free to talk to the media at any time or?
I was free to talk to them, to the media, but and we told them what happened because the case, they didn't intervene and they wouldn't let us go forward in it. But it was interesting because the case had everything. It had an important story. It had the politics. It had the Department of Justice. It had a great whistleblower. I learned more about the blood supply than I ever wanted to know.
The False Claims Act, was it really a big deal? I mean, was it as big as it is now? Because I think last
Not
time
as
I
big as it is
checked,
now.
yeah,
No, no,
yeah.
no,
When
no,
did
no.
that become bigger? When did that like really take off?
Hmm.
In- I mean, was
I'd
it the
say
80s maybe? I don't know.
I'd say it's gotten bigger well, you know what? For a long time, the Justice Department was resistant to whistleblowers and resistant to whistleblower attorneys. They kind of thought we were getting in their way. And I think now they look at us
Still
as
probably getting in their
partners.
way.
No, no, no.
Oh, no.
I think
Yeah,
they've
that's
changed.
good.
I
Yeah,
think they
yeah,
realize that we do good work and that most of
absolutely.
their major recoveries are because we're in there with them. And
Right.
so I think they look at us differently now than they did. And that's a big change and an important change. I mean, because I think that they believe in the public-private partnership, and that in many respects, we are private attorney generals going after fraud, and fraud is bad. It
Absolutely.
hurts all of us.
Yeah, it does.
And when you talk to the lawyers who do fraud work, we'll tell you that if we captured all the fraud dollars, it'd be more than enough money for Head Start programs, for schools, for
Healthcare
housing,
in general,
healthcare,
right?
anything you wanted.
Education.
We education, and there'd be enough money left over for all the guns and bombs that you want. We would have all the money we
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah.
if we could stop fraud,
So
waste, and abuse.
why don't they do that? Because there's 2,000 cases filed through the Fed every year, and they only prosecute or go after like 300 or 400. I think I read.
They're not
Why
set up.
why aren't they? Why it
They're
should be
not set
self-funded,
for it.
pay
I think it was
for itself.
self-funded, but then well, you think about the business angle, right?
Yeah,
Um,
money,
who
money, money,
is
money.
who's going to be the target if we
Right,
fund this properly, right? I mean,
right.
if you gave me a building in Washington and 200 lawyers and another 150 um,
Staff people
specialists
and right,
and staff people
mhm,
and investigators and things like that, and you
right,
put them all in the same building and said, Vince, go get fraud. I double, triple the recoveries just by having a specialization and having it
right.
all in one building and working on it. Now we're like spread out all around the United States of America,
Think
and
how
people
great it'd be, how
rotate.
much good it'd do, and oh,
Yeah, yeah,
it'd
yeah.
kill
But
our
I think,
business though. It would.
but the businesses would have to pay, but
Yeah,
they should pay. They've
they
been
should
making
be.
money off of cheating, and they shouldn't make money off of cheating. So
People
it's
don't
bad.
really, they don't understand, they're sitting there going, oh my God, these whistleblower cases are, hundreds of millions of dollars. And I said, you know what? And to some of these corporations, that's not even a drop in the bucket. That is not a
And
punitive thing,
the settlement is 25 to 35 cents on the dollar of the money that
Right.
they got.
Right. And then you have to pay taxes and you have to pay,
Right.
everything.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
in my case was a wrongful termination under state whistleblower law. So mine was different, mine was public all the way through and we went through trial and everything. But as a whistleblower, it's lifelong after that.
Yeah.
All of your clients are affected with, I call it post whistleblower syndrome
Oh,
for the
yeah.
rest of their lives,
Yeah.
so
No, it's
doing the
hard to
right thing
do.
isn't easy. It's not very
No,
easy.
no, it's not. I mean, it's not at all. It's a hard, difficult choice, and I respect
But
whistleblowers because I think they're so necessary.
well, and you're a hero because I say this to Clay Hallinan was my attorney.
Hmm.
And I say this to him and everybody else, Stephen Cohn and Richard or Reuben Gutman, all of them. Yeah. We would not be able to be a whistleblower if it wasn't for you. So
Uh,
without a whistleblower plaintiff attorney, we wouldn't have that platform to even have a voice out there. So nothing good would happen we wouldn't be able to do what we do. So it's definitely a partnership that is so important. And I tell her,
I could see.
talk to an attorney right away. Don't say anything else until you talk. So
I love my whistleblowers. It's what makes life interesting
do
because
you
I learn
still
something.
do you still
Yeah,
represent a lot? Do you still do a lot?
yeah.
Because you're kind of the big cheese in the firm over there, one of them anyway. And you still get down and dirty and get into court, and you're still doing the thing.
It's fun. I like what I learn. I like representing whistleblowers. I mean, right now, there's so many big things I'm involved in that I can't even talk about. I think as time goes on, you find yourself in the middle of bigger and bigger issues. I don't know how that happens. I don't know how they find you. I don't know how you all find us, but
Because you're famous. Yeah.
so I don't know what it is. I
um,
mean, I've never understood exactly how that works. I don't understand exactly how a whistleblower actually selects a whistleblower lawyer. You know, it's kind of like a magical thing when there's
it
this sort of
is. It
they
is.
decide that you're the person who's going to who I'm going to tell this deep dark secret to, and I think you're going to help me, and I
But you
trust you.
get turned down as a whistleblower. I mean,
No, that's
honestly,
true
it's
too. Yeah,
I got turned down twice. You'll never win a whistleblower case in Minnesota. I got told you can give me $10,000, but I'll
Minnesota.
never. Yeah, that's exactly, And I just thank God. It's like it's pretty, you just find somebody that believes in you. You believe
Yeah.
in your clients, you.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So what are you gonna do? Are you gonna retire anytime? Are you gonna work till you're 100? What are you gonna
I'm not,
do? Are you
I'm
gonna
not
have
going to work
some
till
fun in
I'm not going
life?
to work till I'm 100,
Do you
but
have grandkids? Do you
no, I
do
don't
you
have any
know? Not
grandkids,
yet.
you know, but I'm going to keep working for now. Right now I'm not done. So,
You're so amazing. You're
I mean
so
right
amazing.
now I'm at a point where I know a lot
Yeah, you do.
and I've got younger people working around me. You know, my son is one of them. He works around me. So I'm having fun
Is
trying
he
to.
gonna be a lawyer? Is he?
No, he's
Is
working in the
he?
firm now.
Oh, he is.
He's
All
yeah,
right.
John. He's
Great.
works with me now. There's a couple of other younger people, and I
Wow.
always tease people that I'm training my replacements even every day. I'm training them, right? So hopefully they're learning some tricks from the old guy, and they'll be better
Yeah.
lawyers when it's all said and done. So I'm trying to teach them.
It's that experience, that experience is what they're learning. It doesn't come from a book. You're keeps you young too, because you look great. You look
Thank,
fabulous.
thank you.
Well,
But my back hurts, you know. But
I
no, I'm
know.
just kidding.
Well, we better let you go so you can let the poodle out. Um, well, thank you so much. I've been trying to get in touch with you and tie up and everything, and I'm so glad that I got a chance to talk to you, and we
Thank
got
you.
a chance to be honest about some things, and that's great. And thank you from every whistleblower you've ever represented, because you're amazing. All of you, everybody at the firm is amazing, not just you.
And
Um,
then that's it. But it's a fascinating practice. You know, I mean,
you lose too. I mean,
you
you've lost
do
cases,
lose.
I'm
Yeah,
sure.
you
Yeah.
lose. But the point is
Mm.
that you get to who can say that they go to work and the purpose is to, you know, you're actually fighting not just for your client but for society.
Right.
And you know, somebody has
Yeah.
stolen $200 million from the public fisc, and you're actually
Mm.
trying to return that money so that it can go where it's supposed to go and
Mm.
send a lesson to the rest of the community: don't steal from the government.
Right.
And so I know a lot of people have jobs where they go, okay, well, I'm doing good, but I really do feel like this is a job where we're doing good. And
Where you're making
so
a difference.
we're making a
You really,
difference and we're
yeah.
doing good. And so I think that,
Mm.
and it's something that benefits everybody in America, you
Right.
know,
It's
when we
not about
win.
the money. It really is not about the money. It wasn't for me anyway. And everybody I've talked to, every whistleblower or attorney, it's not about the money. It's about doing good, that
Right.
you
You
made a
want to,
difference.
and it's high, it's white collar crime.
Right.
These are bad things they're doing. You know, they're playing golf on the weekend, but they're stealing millions and millions of dollars that could be going to a better purpose.
Right.
And so
Right.
you get to be part of something that returns that money to where it belongs. and hopefully make things a little bit better. What's not to love about
Right.
that, right? You know,
Absolutely.
so
You probably sleep like a baby. That's what I say. I sleep at night, you know. Well, thank you for everything, Vincent. Thank you. And
thank you.
anybody can find you at Sanford and Heisler firm in DC if they really want the best. Well, now I'm going to get in trouble with Stephen Cohn and Ruben Gutman and
Oh,
everybody
you're gonna get
if
in
I say
trouble.
that, right?
There's
Um,
lots of good
yeah,
whistleblowers
all
out
across the
there,
country, not just in
right?
Washington D.C.
They're
too.
all over the place. There are lots of good whistleblower
Absolutely.
lawyers. The funny thing is that I love our bar. You know, there have been when I went to my first TAF conference in about 1995 or
TAF
96,
is Taxpayers Against Fraud, which is a
right? There were
whistleblower
about
attorney.
45 lawyers there, and I
That's
could probably
it.
list them
Wow.
for you. That was it back then.
Wow.
And now
Jeez.
you go to a TAF conference and it's like 450, 500 lawyers, right? But I love my
Yeah.
bar. I love all the women and men in my bar. They're smart, hardworking people, and so I'm clearly not the only
And
game or the best game in town.
they're all characters. All of you are like these like surreal characters out of a movie or something. It's just amazing to watch. No wonder you're all good at trial. You know, it's fun to watch. It really is. And
So who are these people? I don't
yeah, I mean,
know.
oh, it's funny. It's like you couldn't make up this character on any kind of sitcom if you wanted to. So, and but thank you for everything, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk again soon. You know,
All
follow up
right.
with this as this goes on, and you know, see what happens. But
Yeah, like in about 7 or 8 months, I think some things might come out from under seal that you might find interesting.
okay, so I got to put it on my calendar because we want to hear that. I know I might get so excited. That's the best part of my job now. Like at least I took this whistleblower thing, and I get to hear all the cool stuff that goes on. So. Well, thank you again, Vincent. Tell everybody hello
All
at
right.
Sanford and Heisler, and we'll
All
just
right.
talk again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening today. I need to put a disclaimer out there. I'm not an attorney, so if you have any legal questions or you're searching for legal advice, you need to contact one of them. And it just so happens that on my website at whistleblowerrevolution.com, there's a whole page of amazing whistleblower attorneys all across the United States that you can get a hold of to answer those questions. If you're just searching for regular information about the show, upcoming episodes, or you have a question for me directly, please again go to whistleblowerrevolution.com. Thanks again, and please join us on the battlefield next week.